this week's drive, we go testing with the BAR team and the Peugeot Rally team. Get loose in a NASCAR and go up and over in Germany. All this and more in this week's Drive. The conflict over new rules for Formula One just won't die down. Last week, we reported that Sir Frank Williams and Ron Dennis will challenge the changes in court. FIA President Max Mosley has responded, dismissing claims that he was dictatorial and was dumbing down the sport.
We always want dialogue. They say that I was dictatorial. They were the ones who wouldn't meet, as I explained at the end of the letter in December, put us in a position where we had no alternative but to do what we do. There was no dialogue. And then the letter that I sent to them with proposals as opposed to measures, I mean, we had the measures on the 15th of January. We then had some proposals for the future on the 7th of February. The 7th of February letter was a very carefully thought through set of proposals which solve an awful lot of problems if they're adopted. And back came this incoherent list of complaints, really, from them. And I found that very irritating because I thought they should have given the thing more time, more trouble, thought about it more carefully. And so I couldn't resist then in my response, taking their points one by one and showing that perhaps they weren't very solid. But at the same time, the distressing thing, the sad thing is that they don't really attempt to engage with the proposals for the future that we made or make any alternative proposals themselves to solve the same problems. So we end up just with a silly argument, to put it bluntly.
Mosley, Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone and three-times world champ Niki Lauda were at a news conference in London organised by RTL Television. Lauda was asked to comment on new rules about the fuel load allowed.
So with one lap only, the fuel, I think, was the best idea ever, that you have to have the fuel which you're going to race on, which is another factor because it depends on how many pit stops you're going to do on Sunday. If you do one, you need a heavy car, you will be further back on the grid. If you do 3 stops, you will be further ahead. If you think about Monte Carlo, this is a very difficult decision for the teams what to do. So I think altogether it is the best rule change I've ever seen in Formula One because it will make it more attractive.
It's difficult to say at the moment because we have to see what's going to happen with the result, to see the results of the changes. And then, I mean, I hope that it's all going to be okay, and I hope what we've done is positive.
What do you think are the strongest decisions which have been made?
Honestly, I think the point system, closing the gap so somebody can't get a big lead. I mean, years ago I changed this and made it a bigger gap because I wanted to make sure the guy that won the World Championship was the person that won the races, that you couldn't win the... Now, I mean, it's a little bit more back, if you like, than what we were before because somebody can win the World Championship without winning a race quite easily. I don't think it'll happen, but it could happen.
Well, I suppose the most radical one is the idea of televising the drivers' meeting on a Sunday morning. And I think that could be, particularly if the drivers play along and enter into the spirit of it and talk freely, could be fascinating for the public who don't normally have contact with them and don't see them in their natural environment rather than, say, giving an interview. So having a discussion among themselves about who did what to whom on which particular corner, that I think could be interesting. And then, of course, it's gradually emerging as people understand the way in which the races are going to run, that things like having to decide how much fuel you're putting in before you qualify, and therefore balancing your qualifying time, your grid position, against the amount you've got in your tank when you start the race, introduces a complexity to the races which they haven't had until now.
And I sincerely hope that the others, Williams and maybe Renault, get their act together, because that's what I mean. The way I look at it, we owe more to the public than we do to any of the teams. The teams are professional. They're all of them. It's their business, and the public are paying to watch the sport at the top, or motorsport at the top, and we owe it to the public to make sure that the rules are in such a way that the racing is good. And I think that's what Max has managed to do, to bring this about. At least I hope he has.
I think what we've got to try and do now is get Ron and Frank to concentrate on beating Ferrari and let us try and run the sport. If they could run their teams well enough, then we won't have any problems with television or anything else. But they need to catch up, and they should concentrate on their teams.
Elsewhere, the world of Formula One is getting on with preparations for the new season. Reigning world champs Ferrari aren't standing still either, and Brazilian Felipe Massa has made his debut as a Ferrari test driver at the wheel of last year's title-winning F2002. The 21-year-old replaced compatriot Luciano Berti after being dropped by Sauber at the end of last year and failing to secure a full race drive for 2003. Massa completed 86 laps at the team's private test track. Ferrari said Massa clocked a best time of 57.751 seconds, about 3/4 of a second slower than Michael Schumacher's recent fastest lap in the new F2003 GA. Despite the new car's speed, Schumacher and teammate Rubens Barrichello will race last year's car for the first 4 rounds of this season, as Massa and the technicians test and develop the promising new machine. The team's technical director, Ross Brawn, believes that Massa will mature into a potential winner.
A bit less pressure on him this year. Obviously, being a young guy, drop straight into a race team and having to perform, it's difficult. And in Felipe, I see this raw speed. We just need to polish it a bit and give him all the other skills that a modern racing driver needs. And I think we can do that here. Where that will end, who knows?
I feel very well. So I think it's an amazing car. So I think they are already in the huge step in front of the others. So today I can feel what is the difference of the car. So I think these cars I feel a lot of grip everywhere. So like much more downforce everywhere, especially on the brakes and in the high-speed corner. So but I'm very happy to be here. So to start and my first day at the school.
The experience wasn't entirely new, though. The Sauber team have used Ferrari engines in their cars for several years. Meanwhile, the British-American racing team have been testing their new car at the twin-ring Motegi circuit in Japan. New driver Jenson Button and former world champ Jacques Villeneuve took every opportunity to get to grips with a new car and welcomed the wet weather. The young Briton finished 7th in last year's final driver standings, but BAR have lofty ambitions for the year ahead and still want more from Button. The setup within the BAR team is certainly to Button's likings.
The car's a good basis, and you know, there's some very, very good people on board now. So you know, we should be challenging teams like McLaren and Williams, but you never know. You don't know how big their step's been. But it's going to be a big step forward. That's the main thing from last season.
BAR claim that the new car is an improvement, and Jacques Villeneuve believes that the improvements are mainly down to Honda's evolution.
Yeah, Honda's developed a lot because I think they've understood that racing has changed from 15 years ago, and they've evolved a lot in the last year. So it's still going to take a little bit of time to get to the perfect level, but it's been a big step forward.
The new qualifying format is likely to have a big effect on Formula One, at least for the first few races of the season. Button believes that will add excitement to a sport which, for the majority of the 2002 season, was a procession.
The new qualifying format should be pretty exciting for the crowds and the fans and everyone involved. You know, it's putting 4 qualifying runs into one. You know, there's going to be a lot of pressure on everyone, especially the mechanics, the engineers, to get the car out on time. But you know, I'm looking forward to it. It should be good fun.
This year, Villeneuve hopes to be battling with the big guns for points and places at the top of the drivers' and constructors' standings.
Well, objectives are to fight at the front. I think Ferrari is still a little bit in another league at this point in time, but I believe we can fight against anybody else. We'll see. We'll see at the end of the winter how competitive we are.
How competitive BAR can be will come down to the power of the Honda engine. Both drivers have proven track records, and a competitive car could make all the difference. The Peugeot World Rally team has been testing in Marbella in Spain in similar conditions that they would face when they race for the first time in Turkey. Former world champion Richard Burns has a new engineer to work with as he looks for his first victory since he joined the French team at the end of his title season in 2001. The Peugeot team went to Turkey 2 points behind Citroën at the top of the manufacturer's standings. The Turkish rally replaces the dropped Kenyan Safari rally.
10k left plus 20 slow k right, 40 easy left, 30, 90 left, stone.
The 32-year-old Briton trailed Citroën's Colin McRae and Sebastian Loeb by 2 points after rounds in Sweden and Monte Carlo. Some teams expressed reservations at competing in Turkey, bordering Iraq, at a time of tension in the region. None of the teams have tested in Turkey, and the rough roads, many of them more than 1,400 metres above sea level, are an unknown quantity.
Because we have rallies in Greece and Cyprus as well, it's probably quite similar to those two. So we probably have quite a bit of experience from that point of view, but obviously the roads themselves and the knowledge of the bends and everything like that, then we can only take what we can from the recce.
Although Burns has never driven in Turkey, team members visited the rally's headquarters and inspected the rally's route. This newly gained knowledge of Turkey, combined with experience from rallies in Cyprus and Greece, may assist the Britons' bid to displace Sebastian Loeb from the top of the drivers' standings. Burns hopes advice from his new engineer will make a difference on the rough terrain too.
We try to set the car to use the same setup as in a rally, which is similar to this new rally, and it's a starting point for us.
In the first 2 rounds, Burns scored a 5th place in Monte Carlo and 3rd in the second event in Sweden. As it turned out, Burns ended the Turkish event 2nd behind Carlos Sainz, and his major rivals Loeb and Gronholm failed to score points. Gronholm came home 9th, nearly 11 minutes off the pace, while Loeb crashed out. As a result, Burns now leads the title chase just 1 point ahead of McRae and 2 points ahead of Sainz, the former Ford pairing now in the Citroën camp. This puts Citroën in a clear manufacturer's lead, 8 points ahead of Peugeot. Across the Atlantic and onto the ovals now for the second of 36 NASCAR rounds. The North Carolina track at Rockingham is known simply as The Rock, the tracks that's too tough to tame. Kenny Wallace found that out for himself when he was tapped from behind by Jack Sprague. Wallace then crashed into the inside wall. On lap 122, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was tapped, and that caused Jerry Nadeau to spin. Seconds later, Jeremy Mayfield spun out as well.
He gets tapped. Yeah, you can see the damage on the rear of his car. He checked up, and somebody ran in the back of him and spun him out.
Later in the race, on lap 276, Earnhardt Jr. spun out himself for the 2nd time in the race.
Comes back up in the racetrack. Benson gets by, and poor old Jeremy.
A tyre got away from Elliott Sadler's pit crew, but everyone was able to avoid it, although officials penalised the team later.
It'll be a penalty if anybody claims it.
With 97 laps left, Earnhardt was in trouble again as he and Jeff Gordon touched. Gordon spun into the infield but was able to keep control and stay out of everyone's way.
And keep it out of oncoming traffic. Jerry Nadeau also spin.
With 10 laps left, Dale Jarrett in number 88 passed race leader Kurt Busch in car 97 to take the lead for the first time.
Drops to the bottom.
And here comes Kurt on the outside.
Then, with 5 laps to go, Jarrett was held up by traffic, and Busch, who had led for 150 laps, reclaimed the lead.
Yes, he is. Jack Sprague held up Dale Jarrett just enough that Kurt Busch gets back by. And the 99.
But with just 3 laps left, Jarrett once again fought his way past Busch to take the lead for good. It was his 31st NASCAR victory. Busch, who also finished 2nd at the Daytona 500 the previous weekend, takes an early 31-point lead in the Winston Cup standings, and Jarrett now sits 2nd. Matt Kenseth, winner last year at Rockingham, finished third, giving Ford a clean sweep of the podium. Meanwhile, the kart season got underway on a temporary 14-turn street circuit in St. Petersburg in Florida. Rookie driver Sébastien Bourdais was fastest in practice and led from pole position for the first 30 laps until he was passed by fellow rookie Tiago Monteiro. There was trouble for Rodolfo Levin on the 13th lap. His spin wasn't a major incident, but it was serious enough for the race officials to display the yellow caution flags that closed up the race order. Veteran IndyCar driver Paul Tracy, signed by the Players team in the off-season, was second off the grid but slipped to fourth place by the 22nd of the 105 laps. Another rookie, Ryan Hunter-Ray, had trouble in turn 10 and understeered off the track and into the tyre wall. The track blockage created a full-course yellow flag situation. Tracy, the favourite for the 2003 season, looked like he would make yet another slow start in the hunt for the 2003 title. However, the 34-year-old Canadian lifted his game to take the lead on lap 35 and leave the field in his wake. It turned out to be a trouble-free day for him. The rest of the field couldn't mount a serious challenge and battled it out for the minor places. Michael Jourdain Jr. claimed second place, over 12 seconds behind the Canadian. Bruno Junqueira finished third, a further 4.4 seconds back. Tracy drove hard to the finish line all alone to win the first ever Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. He gets 20 points for the win and 1 extra for leading for the most laps. After he had won, Tracy did some celebratory donuts to the delight of the crowd. All three drivers were driving Ford Cosworth Lolas. Round 2 takes place in a month at the Fundiadores Park Circuit in Monterrey in Mexico. Celebratory donuts. The heir to the British throne, Prince Charles, has visited the BMW-owned car factory in Oxford, where 200,000 models of the new Mini have now rolled off the production line. The new Mini replaced the classic model of this cult small car, which first appeared in Britain in 1959. The Prince met some of the 4,500 workers who are now employed making the new Mini, which was last month named Car of the Year at the International Car Show in Detroit. The United States and Japan remain prime markets for the new model of this famous car. Upwards of 200,000 of the new models have come off the production line since it started up here 2 years ago. BMW has invested a total of £230 million in the new Mini, creating 700 new jobs in the traditional heartland of British car production. The new Mini isn't quite the British icon it once was. Owned by a German company, it's a true global product with parts coming from all over the world, including an engine developed jointly by BMW and Chrysler and built in Brazil. We go now to the final of the Night of Jumps 3 freestyle motocross competition in Riesa in Germany. 13 of the world's leading freestyle motocross riders took part, including Mad Mike Jones, who won the 2 previous Night of Jumps contests. A highest air high jump competition was held before the main freestyle event, and Sebastian Volter took first place, clearing a bar at 5.7 metres. Gary Taylor was the top performer in qualifying, from which the top 6 advanced. The Briton set the benchmark in the final, judges awarding him 321 points, and he looks set to improve on his 3rd place in the previous event. Germany's leading freestyle rider, Fabian Bauersachs, finished in 2nd place in the qualifiers and ensured a place on the podium with the final's penultimate run. Bauersachs was also awarded 321 points and shared the runners-up spot with Taylor. Mike Jones claimed first place despite finishing a lowly 6th in qualifying. The American made it a hat-trick of Night of Jumps wins with a gutsy performance in the final, earning 341 points.
I did a kiss of death and a side saddle lander and a suicide no-hander lander, so I saved all my big tricks for last, and I think that's what impressed the judges.
Following the 3rd event of its type, organisers have decided to expand the Night of Jumps into a series, and Vienna, Austria, will host a contest shortly. 3,000 fans went to Pesaro to see the best trials riders in the world battle it out over 6 sections, a dual-lane race and a high jump. This was the 8th of 12 rounds in the World Indoor Trials Championship, Albert Kapastani got off to a good start in the final, cleaning the first two sections. But the reigning champion found penalties on the third and fourth, and the Spaniard ended with 16 points in third place. Dougie Lampkin's good start in the final was undone by errors in sections 3 and 4. He recovered to clean the last two hazards, but runner-up was as good as he could manage. Lampkin used to be the undisputed #1 in the sport, but his mantle has been assumed by Adam Raga. The 20-year-old Spaniard went feet up through section 3 and also cleaned the big ladder section that proved almost impossible for his rivals to master. Raga came into the event having won 4 straight rounds, and his boundless confidence was evident throughout as he claimed another victory with a near-flawless run, just 5 penalty points conceded. The Gas rider then underlined his dominance of this year's championship by easily beating Lampkin in the dual-lane race. Raga now has a 15-point lead over Lampkin in the championship standings and will claim the indoor title if he can take podium spots in the remaining 3 rounds. With Raga holding 6 wins in the 8 rounds completed so far, it seems that nothing can stop him from lifting his first World Championship crown. Finally, we go back in time to before the invention of the internal combustion engine, as cycling enthusiasts from all over the world gathered in the small town of Edendale in Tasmania, Australia, for the World Penny Farthing Championships. The antique racing machines were a popular means of transport in the late 1800s, before the modern safety bicycles were invented. Competitors rolled back the years by saddling up and racing, both fast and slow, on the brakeless, gearless bikes. 68 competitors from the USA, Germany, France and the Netherlands gathered for the World Championships of the antiquated bicycle. Clambering down from the saddle can prove hazardous, as biathlon competitor Heath Blair discovered.
What's the attraction of penny farthing bike races for you?
My wife and I have both been into bicycles all our lives, and I especially love the history. And we've found a group of people that have really become very close friends, and many of those are Aussies, and it's just wonderful. They've opened up their homes and their hearts to us. It's been great.
The first bicycles to be raced to any great extent were in Australia, with regular race meetings taking place at cricket grounds in Tasmania throughout the 1880s. The glory days of the penny farthing didn't last long. Production was phased out in the 1890s when safety bicycles with chain drive made the large front wheel unnecessary. World Cup final riders had to negotiate 4 laps of the circuit, with a fascinating duel developing between defending champion Ryan Sullivan and Sean Hennessy. Hennessy took the honours with a powerful surge to the line. The South Australian, who won the title in 2001, paid tribute to the standards of the races.
Yeah, every year we come back and there's more riders here and they're always better class, so, you know, it's really good for the sport, I think.
So there you have it. Penny farthing racing. Not just a sport, more a way of life. So, whether your car is sleek and red or falls off the road, so you stay on track and up to speed, make sure you catch next week's Drive.